The passing of Ultimate Warrior. Used to be James Hellwig, who changed his name legally to Warrior. It didn't affect me to quite the same extent that when Randy Savage died, because I loved Randy Savage so much more. I think I'd cry when Savage died.
Same.
How much it affected me. But it still affected me for a few reasons. One, he was outcast literally from the WWE since like 96. Cast aside, and when he was either mentioned or brought up, it was always in a disparaging way. They came out with a fucking DVD in 2005, the Rise and Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior. They came out with a DVD just to trash the guy.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous. He actually sued him for like slander or libel. I'm not sure if he won. I think he lost it.
Yeah,
but
there was very little rise and a whole lot of fall.
Yeah, he wasn't really good in the ring, and he disrespected everyone, and he didn't love the business, and just all this shit that even if some of that was true, why make a DVD about? You know what I mean? Like, what were they getting out of that? You know what I mean? Like, he hadn't been seen in WWE for 9 years at that point. Like, why would you even do a DVD like that? You know what I mean?
Because they had the rights to, and it was a moneymaker, and at that point in time, it was very much the thing to hate on the Warrior. It was, and I'm gonna come clean. I've never been an Ultimate Warrior fan. Just based on like ring work and his character. I always thought he was too over the top, too superhero-y, too comic booky. But I realize that that's also fun, and a lot of people enjoyed that.
At the time, that's what worked, though, too.
Yeah,
the superhero sort of thing.
And he got by on a lot of charisma. He did, which
total charisma.
Yeah, total charisma. Which made up for all of his.
Arguably, the biggest charisma of any guy you've ever seen in wrestling, and how much he oozed it. You know
but he was important. I did something that I haven't done in probably 20 years last night, and that was after finding out that he died. I watched Hogan. Warrior WrestleMania 6,
which is a good match.
You know what? It's a good match.
It's a good.
I'm gonna go on the record now saying that two of my least favorite in-ring workers put on a match that I really enjoyed watching. It was fun, and it proves that it's a weird comparison, but just like Hogan Rock Mania, you can if the build-up, if the heat, if the excitement for a match is big enough, you can put on a very basic wrestling match and have it come off as something so much more.
So yeah. Ultimate Warrior to me, I'm trying to think back when I was watching then if I liked him. I can't remember if I ever thought he was better than Hogan, but at least he was something different than Hogan, because ever since I was like 5, Hogan was the big dog. So it's nice to see someone else come in, and the torch was passed. At least at the time, WrestleMania 6
sure.
in 1990, it was passed. And it was a good match. And they worked their asses off, and they told a good story. In-ring story, the announcing was great with Ventura and Gorilla Monsoon. Everything was there. And that's why it's a shame that, he was the biggest guy in the company for like maybe a year and a half, 2 years.
Yep.
Warrior. He was huge when he was the IC champ beforehand, when he beat Honky Tonk Man, who had it for like a year. That summer before, I think that was in '89 when he won it, Warrior. And so to have a guy in your company be the biggest guy for like 2 years, and then come back, he came back, then he left the company over a dispute, then came back like 6 months later, then he came back again in '96. He was memorable, one of the most memorable guys ever. To try to shit on him afterwards just because you don't personally like him for whatever reason, I hate revisionist history with that. I just can't stand it.
Right.
And plus, he doesn't get a chance to tell his side of it. So, which is why, again, I'm not sure how it happened. I credit Triple H, because Triple H is the guy that got Bruno Sammartino to come back for the Hall of Fame, last year. No one ever thought that would happen after Sammartino slammed Vince McMahon publicly about the steroids and the vulgarity of the Attitude Era product. They got Sammartino back, which is what they should have done. So they get Warrior back for a Hall of Fame induction, which is deserved. I do feel that. He did more, maybe not a compiler, but just for his runs of like 4 years, 5 years, huge.
Wrestling's as much about the presence as it is the in-ring action, and I said, I don't like him as a worker, and I didn't even so much like his charisma, but I respect it. I understand why he got over, and just for his presence and his character.
And he worked hard.
Yeah, and he deserved to be in there.
And he worked hard. It's not. Sometimes a guy working hard can be almost enough to get you that spot.
Being a good worker and working hard are two different things. You can work really hard and still not put on a fantastic match, but that's respectable. At least you're not phoning it in.
The fact that you can say he had a 2 or 3 extremely good matches, at a pay-per-view. His match against Randy Savage at WrestleMania 7
Yep.
is a very good match.
Oh, we talked about that.
I know you dislike the ending, but it's still it tells a story.
It's a good
and
match. No, like I said, it's a fun one.
And he had a very good feud with Rick Rude.
I don't know.
Over the IC belt.
So I don't know when I.
So let me just get back to why it's important. So obviously he just did the Hall of Fame speech just on Saturday. It was like a 35-minute speech, and he was there not entirely, but to he did show how hurt he was over the DVD because he honestly thought that it was a hatchet job. You said it was. I've seen a good chunk of that DVD. As much as I respect Bobby the Brain Heenan, I don't like how he just buries Warrior every chance he gets. I just never understood that. I'm not sure if he did something. Maybe he dropped Heenan the wrong way once on a Gorilla Press Slam. Maybe he was a little dangerous.
Right.
But there's a difference between that and saying a guy hates the business. And that's what it seemed like Warrior was very hurt about. Because Warrior talked about him in the territories, and when he came up with Steve Borden and Sting in the mid to late 80s, how they respected all the veterans for being there and accepting them into the fold. And from all the stories you hear about Sting, that's true. No one has a bad thing to say about Sting at all in the business. And Sting's never called out Jim Hellwig or Warrior for being a bad guy. He always said, yeah, we came up, we were fine together. So I think a lot of it was either jealousy or the fact that maybe they thought Warrior didn't pay his dues in the late 80s to get to the spot where he was at. But my thing always was here's a guy that, yeah, he wasn't the most talented, but he put a ton of work, obviously, into his physique, which probably killed him, after the fact. I mean, let's be honest. Even he was probably doing something performance enhancing, whether it was steroids or something else.
Yes,
but because he was absolutely huge.
No,
he had
you don't get that size.
Him and Rick Rude had the best bodies in wrestling at the time. It's arguably who had the better one. But they both were enormously cut. And even if you don't use performance enhancing drugs, which they probably did, your heart cannot take those huge muscles over an extended period of time. The body is not built to have muscles that your body can't support.
Yeah.
So that comes back to haunt you, as it has for so many wrestlers that have died in their 40s, and the Warrior died when he was 54. So I think what happened was he got into a spot where Vince saw that this is the next big guy. Hogan's been our top guy for like 7 years. It's time to move on. And Hogan wanted to move on and do movies and TV and try something else. So they picked Warrior to do it, which was the best pick at the time to choose. And I think people were jealous of it, and the people, maybe they thought the way Warrior was backstage, they thought he was aloof or whatever, and because of that, they trash him after he leaves, which is a shame, because I said he was actually kind of hurt by it. And again, I think I texted you, there's no way, if Warrior was such an awful guy backstage, there's no way in hell he would have got to the spot that he got to. There's no way.
My other thing is a twist.
It just doesn't happen.
A twist on what you said. If he was really as bad as they had said he was, if he was really as dangerous, if he was really as bad, things would not have been patched up so easily for him to come back.
That too.
That's how I feel. You wouldn't have brought someone back who was genuinely dangerous. You wouldn't have brought someone back. I mean, even though the fans would want to see it, I mean, we've seen we've seen what happens with back dealings at WWE before.
Yeah.
He would not have been brought back for this if there wasn't at least a little bit of exaggeration or fabricating and a little bit of mea culpa on WWE's part.
Sure. I think Vince probably realized, hey, I probably crossed the line with that DVD.
Yeah.
I like big time. They probably took. I remember. I think they took a lot of people's interview stuff out of context, because like with Jericho, it's funny. You see some of the same interview footage recorded like 10 years back. I remember with Jericho, he said something like, "Yeah, then you got to the ring, and then there goes all the fun, basically." Then they use the same sort of sit down to promote Warrior, saying, "Yeah, he comes to the ring and he's all charismatic and running, and you know what I mean." And it's just like,
I'm sure they picked and chose.
But again, for Hogan to cleanly drop the belt to someone, I don't even know. I can't even think of more than like 2-3 guys that Hogan has lost cleanly to.
I looked it up last night. I don't remember who it was, but it's something like, depending on what your definition of a clean drop is, there's like 6. There's like 6.
And I'm talking obviously before he won the title in '83. I'm talking before that.
Yeah.
Is it like 6 guys, really?
I think it's like 6. It's like 6, it was like 6 to 12, depending on your definition.
6 to 12 matches, or 6 to 12 guys, even.
Guys.
Yeah, exactly. We're talking. I'm trying to think. What maybe Angle was one when he did his run in 2003.
I don't know.
But I mean, like, I don't think Hogan would have done that with some guy he didn't respect or didn't like. And I know Hogan and Warrior have had a feud on and off the past 15 years afterwards, but again, I just don't see it happening. I don't see Vince putting the belt and making the guy the face of the company that was dangerous and disrespectful to the business. I don't think the other wrestlers would have stood for it. Guys like DiBiase that were there at the time, guys like Harley Race that were there, they wouldn't have went for it, I don't think. So again, and Warrior did address that, but he also addressed the fact that people got on me for living my gimmick, which always people got on him for, but he said, hey, if it worked for me in the ring, I thought it worked for myself in real life. And to an extent, I guess it did. That's why he wanted to live his life by that sort of code, the Warrior code. Is it goofy? Yeah, but it's nice to have some sort of code to live by, I guess, and
well, that's the thing. That was, it's I feel like they almost didn't like him for being a weirdo, and I mean that in a nice way. I mean that in like a sarcastic way, because if there was one thing I did kind of like about the Warrior was that he was that guy outside of the ring.
Yes,
he
embodied that spirit.
He lived it. He lived it. He loved it. And that's the other thing. They say he doesn't like the business. You have to take the business. I mean, the business has got to be a pretty big part of you if you take your in-ring gimmick and kind of live your life by it.
Yeah, and he gave credit to, he brought up he talked about all the guys that helped train him in his speech, all the territories he started with, the Von Erichsen, everyone else. I mean, he gave credit during his speech. He didn't come up there and was arrogant and say, no, I did this all myself. He gave credit where credit was due. And so again, I don't see that from a guy who didn't like the business. Again, he said that me and like Steve Borden, we were respectful, that we were honored that these guys that were there, they led us into what they loved, and so then we can be a part of it. And he even brought up he wanted an award. For 5-10 minutes he went off on the fact that the guys that make this work are the guys putting up the ring every night. They get no sleep. They shower during the matches. They bring the ring down. They drive all the way during the night. They get a cheeseburger and 2 Pepsis, is that what he said? They put the ring up, and they live their lives like that, and they still come up to us, to the restaurant, and say, hey, do you need anything? And Warrior's like, do I need anything? That's again, that's
right.
Not a guy who hates the business.
Right.
He respects what people are putting into it, and so much so that he actually said, we need some sort. We have a celebrity wing. How about we have a wing that we honor the guys that, like the technicians and the guys that put up the ring? And where's that? Why aren't we celebrating those guys?
Honor the guy who's been doing it for a decade.
If you talk about a guy who would literally in his car drive from arena to arena and sell merchandise out of his car and always do it with a smile on his face, and he wants the award named after the guy, and it escapes right now. That to me is so just honorable that no wrestler that's been in the Hall of Fame has ever even mentioned anything like that.
Right.
That shows what type of guy he was. That to try to bury someone like that's a shame. And so he was visibly hurt, but the crowd was still hanging on every word. The crowd was yelling for one more match, and he said, "No, I know my time has passed." And obviously, maybe he knew his time was coming to an end. Unfortunately,
I did watch his
Raw speech.
Awfully fitting. Sad, in retrospect. His Raw speech, which was brief and nice, and but he looked physically pained.
Yeah.
He looked like he was not physically well. I hate to say it. He looked like a guy who was ready to keel over when he was getting out of that ring.
Here's a quote from his speech, which I don't know if he knew his time was up.
Let's end on this because it doesn't. Yeah, there's not much more to say. I know the quote.
Every man's heart one day beats its final beat, his lungs breathe their final breath, and if what that man did in his life makes the blood pulse through the body of others and makes them believe deeper in something larger than life, then his essence, his spirit will be immortalized. It's poignant, it's true, and I'm very glad he got a chance to come back and at least say that to the fans, and then less than a day later he's gone, probably from some sort of heart attack.
Yeah, but I would like to think that he got to do it at peace, as opposed to with all these loose ends.
He made up with Vince, guys like Kevin Nash he made up with, and so
perfect timing.
There you go. So Warrior, gone. I loved you as a kid. I used you in WrestleFest, you and Mr. Perfect for the wrestlers I always use as my tag team, and thanks for the memories. Honestly, very entertaining.